Hello, I'm David Bryant. Welcome to another episode taken from chapter 5 of my book, The Hour Has Come, as we unpack the promise of a new American revolution through Jesus Christ. Now, in the last episode, we looked at the first of three major misconceptions of what a Christ awakening is all about. And we're doing this as a way of learning more about a Christward revival by the contrast with these false conclusions. Now, the first one that we just looked at in the last episode is that a Christ awakening means everyone around us and across our nation ends up becoming Jesus followers. As we saw, there is a lot more to that misconception that might appear at first glance. So feel free to stop here if you want and go back and view that previous video clip. But now, here, we tackle the second misconception, that an American Christ awakening is another form of Christian nationalism. Now, this is so important. We're going to do this in two-part analysis. The next video clip will be part 2, but here we're in part 1. So let me begin by reassuring you. The impending Christ awakening in this nation that we're talking about through this entire book and the entire series is not some kind of covert operation to install some form of what is often referred to today as Christian nationalism, nor is it intended to provide a justification for the church to foster some form of American theocracy. In fact, when a person or a church or a city or a nation begins to awaken to the greatness and glory and grace and gospel of God's risen, reigning, redeeming Son, what unfolds is infinitely grander than any dream that Christian nationalism inspires. But why don't we begin by defining terms? Christian nationalism is most of all a political ideology held by millions of our fellow citizens, millions of Christians, asserting that the nation was founded to be a Christian nation and should remain so. Christian nationalism claims that the Christian Bible, containing God's eternal law, should provide the foundation for all aspects of life in our democratic republic, assuming primacy over public institutions and especially the government itself, both local and national. For example, President Reagan's vision of America as a city on a hill with a divine mandate before the nations is one form of this outlook. Now, in some cases, but not all, this ideology gets fused with white supremacy, which is a belief in the superiority of white people over every other race and their right to dominate a culture. Now, for many, this conviction translates into a longing to sort of retrieve a perceived past where Christianity in America was championed by the white race, which in turn shaped society by enforcing biblical principles. Therefore, for many Christian nationalists, as Americans become more multiracial, pluralistic, religiously diverse, with the white race predicted to be a minority by 2040, many interpret these rapid demographic trends as indicating, at the same time, the fatal dilution and demise of our biblical foundations. Frequently, in their determination to prevail, not a few Christian nationalists will look for more authoritarian leverages to help them take back control, sometimes by relying on intimidations or possibly even in some cases violence if necessary, as a way to reclaim for America what they perceive as her God-given exceptionalism among the nations, her manifest mission, which has been ordained for her to have. But ultimately, the goal is to transform America into a nation governed explicitly and exclusively by Christian standards and principles, Christian precepts and priorities, all of it derived from the Bible. For many Christian nationalists, one of their symbols is the Appeal to Heaven flag. Now, this flag, maybe you've seen it, it dates back to the Revolutionary War era. George Washington adopted it for his troops to display in battle. Over the last few years, however, that same banner has become a prominent symbol. It's like a rallying cry for Christian nationalism's mission. In fact, many carried it at the siege on the Capitol on January 6th in 2021. Maybe you caught it there. Now, at times, this vision takes other forms. Sometimes the goal of rescuing and reestablishing a Christian America may be referred to as dominion theology, or by others, maybe you've heard the Seven Mountain Mandate, seeking to instill Christian values over and throughout 7 key societal pillars or mountains: religion, family, education, government, media, arts and entertainment, business, essentially doing it all from the top down. Now, obviously, it's easy for the uninformed to see all the Christian terminology and Christian activism thrown around as, well, just the flip side of a Christ awakening. After all, the person of Jesus actually gets brought into the conversations of Christian nationalists and the others sometimes. At least he usually receives some kind of honorable mention in their pronouncements, one way or another. And many Christian nationalists stress the need to fight and win what we are in, and that is a cosmic battle. And it's over the future of the whole universe, but also over the future of America as a Christian nation. And they want to stand with the forces of good against those of evil. And this form of Christian nationalism carries out, first of all, its mission by prayerfully and directly engaging the demonic, almost like hand-to-hand combat. And the mandate for Christians, as they see it, is to confront the multitude of manifestations of satanic advances that is against our nation, seeking to destroy our Christian foundations, often with a key focus on triumphing in perceived culture wars. Of course, there is some truth that has to be found in all that we've just surveyed. I admit that. And for many Christian nationalists, I have to also admit their efforts are, in their view, for the cause of Christ. But the question is, how different is all of this from what I mean by a genuine American Christ awakening? Well, the answer to that, it's almost like comparing apples and oranges. And that's why we're going to have a part 2 to this study, because there's a lot yet to be explored. But here's one hint on what the answer is. And it's this: a Christ awakening is not about Christians taking control of their nation for their king and his kingdom. Instead, it is about the king taking control of his people to awaken them to a fresh vision and passion for spreading the saving glory of their king, and restoring them and renewing them and reforming them so that they can do the same for the nation by Christ's life-giving, transforming power poured out through the love and service of his transformed followers. And my friends, the hour for that to happen has definitely come. More on that in the next video clip. Why don't you join me then?